Hi, everyone. I'm meteorologist Royal Norman. This is Sonoran Skye, a podcast associated with Arizona's Family and our First Alert Weather Team. And we cover all kinds of subjects, mainly to do with the weather and with the environment around Arizona. And we really have an interesting guest for you from the Arizona State Forestry Department today, John Truitt, who's the State Fire Management Officer. In other words, if there's a fire in the state, he's the guy who's going to take charge of the thing. John, how are you this morning? Thanks for joining us.
Good, doing very well. Thank you.
So, John, one of the things I just want to ask you about is fighting fires and wildfires in particular, something that you've done for a long time now.
Yeah, I've been in the wildland fire business for 46 years now. A lot of my time was over in California, being involved in national teams. So fought fire all across the Western United States, over in Europe, Canada, Australia. So yeah, I've been involved with it for quite a long time now.
So in all that experience, you read in books that wildfires act differently, and they all have, I don't want to say personality because that makes it sound like it's something good, but they all act in a different way. Has there ever been a fire wherever you've fought that you've been involved with that just really went, wow, this is something I've never seen before?
Well, it's in the last, I would say 5 years or so, we're getting to that point. With all the fires that I've been on over, depends on how extreme the fire environment is, whether you put wind behind it, there's always that wow factor. But lately in the last, 5 to 7 years, we don't even need that wind component anymore. We've got the fuel loading out there. So it's really starting to, create more intense fires. The continuous fuel bed that's out there, in the last few years, again, our latest wow was the Dragon Bravo when, we were up there and, we're setting record atmospheric, lows on far as moisture goes, and we're on a fire that has no real true driver of the environment, but we're in red flag warning, basically 10 out of the 14 days. And, just the fuel-driven fire that was, and the pyrocumulus that built over it day after day was pretty impressive.
Yeah, that fire, and it seems. Let me ask you this: it seems like on a lot of fires that we have, either the damage is done, and by damage I mean either homes or structures, or unfortunately even people getting hurt by them, is done at the very start or at the very end. When people are thinking it might be licked and I don't have to worry about it. But at the very start, it almost seems like the first hours to days of a fire are super important.
Yeah, it is. And as long as we have, our available resources there close, we can go back to this year. We had the Coyote fire up there by Oracle that started right in the community. And, that thing was already burning houses within the first half hour or so. So it's as long as we're there close, we get our resources there, get our strategies together. That's when we start bringing that calm to the chaos, and we can get out front of it. We can, if there's a community out front, we get that community evacuated and whatnot. But anymore, over here in Arizona, we're getting that urban sprawl everywhere, and every fire has potential with being within that urban interface now.
Yeah, I was going to say that must really complicate your procedures from even 20 years ago because, as we saw in Scottsdale a couple of 3 years ago, we had a grass fire / bushfire get going, and within 45 minutes it was threatening homes because of that interface between the homes and the wild lands. That's something you didn't have as much a while back, did you?
No, we used to have cushion, we used to have some time and space. Now, with the scattered structures out there, any potential now, and especially the valley floor, even the outskirts, just below the rim, we're running into structures out there that haven't been there in the last 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, that is crazy. So we decided to do this podcast because we read and hear in the media that people saying that the whole year is the entire fire season now. And I want to get your feedback on that. It does seem like, well, first of all, we can get a fire any time of the year. We know that. But Do you see the whole year as being fire season, or do you see different parts of the year being fire seasons, at least in your mind at state forestry?
Yeah, in my mind, you have absolutely right. Different phases of fire
Hmm.
season. We can have a fire any time of the year here in the Southwest. But it depends on the fire environment, how severe that fire will be. You know, so again, like last year at this time, we were up around Payson, on a fire up there, burning through the timber and whatnot. It wasn't an overwhelming fire, but it was still had a lot of ground to cover, a lot of resource draws that we had to pull out. During the off season, we don't have those available resources.
Mhm. And does it seem on average? Okay, so now we'll sort of maybe pin it down a little bit more. And I say on average, that's probably not the right word, but typically our most potential for most severe fire activity in the state is after those winter and springtime rains end and there's a bit of drying, and then we get into that parchedness of the pre-summer into early summer before the monsoon gets here. Is that still what you would consider sort of our most dangerous time?
Yeah, it is, and we kind of gauge it off of not only the environment, like you're saying, but also our vegetation. We get into right now the vegetation's in a dormant state. So as we get through the winter and in early spring, you start getting those spring rains, you get the green up. But it depends on how fast that green up acts. Do we get moisture in a timely manner? Do we get over a period of time? Do we just get one shot of moisture? Then that green up starts to fall off, and by about late April, and then come late April, early May, we're in a significant fire environment then. From then until you get the monsoon.
And we know that snowpack is important for water in the valley. Is snowpack important to keep the forest as healthy as possible to help it fight its own fire, its own battle against fires?
Yeah, snowpack goes both ways. Not only moisture but compaction. Right now you start to get some of those late fall rains, and we get the green up going up underneath the timber stands, and you kind of rely on that snowpack to pack that fuel down. If you don't get that good snowpack, then that fuel stays more readily available, has airflow around it, and it'll burn more intensely.
So, in reality, since we did have these late fall rains and uh, we're dry for now, we are still cautiously optimistic that we'll get a rather normal snowfall winter into Arizona. So, what you folks are watching is essentially, well, you're watching the weather all the time, aren't you?
Well, we have to be amateur meteorologists. When we try to combine fire science in that, the environment is the contributing factor to that. And then we kind of look at our long range. Like right now, we had those late fall type rains come in. Like we're saying, unprecedented rains, record-breaking rains. But now we're out there almost in a spring type condition. So we're getting all that green up going now.
Hmm.
So now we're already looking at, okay, what's going to happen February, March now? We already have that fuel loading in place. We start getting that drying out, and we start getting some little moisture shots in the spring. It's just going to add to that fuel moisture, and or lessen the fuel moisture and add to that fuel loading that's out there.
Yeah, and one of the terms, in fact, you just kind of used it. One of the terms you use as firefighters fighting these forest fires, and wildfires is a better name for them. They're not always in the forest, but is fuel loading. What does that mean? Does that essentially just mean how much stuff is there to burn?
Yeah, that's correct. We use the word fuel. It's available, whether it's grass, the brush, the woodlands, timber. Those are all part of your fuel components. And it depends on how thick that fuel component is, or what we rely on fuel, the fuel compactness and fuel loading. Fuel loading will add to your intensity and your rates of spread.
I got you. And the other thing is that you are concerned about is the dryness of the forest and that wood. If it's moist, that's good. If it's super dry, that's not so good. Correct?
Right, right. Because we always classify our fuels as 10, 100-hour, 1,000-hour, which are diameters. So the finer fuels are what carries your fire. And
Yeah.
then if you have a dry season, your 100-hour fuels are about the 3 to 5 inch range. Then you go bigger out. Some of those larger fuels can be almost kiln dried woods laying out in the forest.
Oh wow. Yeah, it's amazing how fast you call it fine fuels, but how fast a fire can roll. in grasses and bushes and dried out areas like that. I mean, in the early 2000s, when we saw these big fires, Rodeo Skye and the Wallow Fire, we got crowning and we got movement through the forest, but it didn't seem like, I mean, it was fast, but it didn't seem like lightning speed. Sometimes I've been observing in the last few years on these, I'll call them mid-elevation fires where there is a lot of grass. These things take off and go fast.
Yeah, it depends on your fuel and our classification of fuel. You're right. The grasses and the lighter brush, there's less resistance to the flame front, so you have more rapid rate of spread on there. Where on timber, you get a little more resistance because the airflow and whatnot, the fuel loading in there. You get more intense fire, but slower rates of spread.
Yeah. So, review for us a little bit last year. Personally, I was surprised we had so many wildfires. What's going on? How can we keep the number of wildfires down in our state, which would seem to be a goal of everybody?
To me, the number one thing of keeping them down is ignition sources. What I mean by that is it's that public education. When we look at our fire starts out here, a high percentage of those are caused by the human caused fires.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be malicious in intent, but just accidental starts, whether they're trying to do the vegetation clearing, dragging the chains is a big one. People don't understand how severe that problem is, driving when people are trying to escape the valley heat, dragging their boats or trailers or whatever up to the high country. It only takes one spark to roll off the pavement into the shoulder of the road, and those fires take off there. So our number one thing is that we can control our human start. We can't control Mother Nature. We can't control the lightning, but we can control our human start.
Yeah, wasn't there at least there was the thought that, I don't know that it was ever proven or whatever, but wasn't there a thought that there might have been one vehicle in particular that started 3 or 4 fires going up the beeline one day because of what was presumed to be sparking? So it's just that easy, correct?
It's real easy, especially during the month of May, June, when you get the low RHs out there, relative humidities. Your fuels become more receptive, and less of a ignition source has to be out there. You can get everybody kind of thinks that, well, cigarettes are the ignition source, but it has to be very, very low relative humidity out there for those to catch. When you take a piece of metal that hot, the duration of that, it'll catch the grass on the lawn more readily than a cigarette.
All right, so we're going to look to the future, and I know you can't forecast the fire season in 2026, the finishing up 2025 as we're recording this, but what kind of feelings does your office have in terms of, are we going to have just another fire season similar to last season where we're going to be chasing it all over the state?
The potential is there, and then when we're always asked about predicting fire season and what it looks like, we always rely on potential.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, with those latest rains that just came in, our potential is very, very high to have a low elevation fire season this year. We'll have to wait and see how the rest of the winter goes and into spring to see where our upper elevations are going to do. But you have other factors in there, not only the moisture, but right now you have basically a beetle infestation above the rim, so you get a lot of bug kill trees out there now. Mm-hmm. So a lot of just the health of the forest is deteriorating in some areas, that going to add to that potential of fire season.
And what would be the best case scenario through the winter months in terms of rain and snow that could help us out here? Is the easy answer lots of it?
It's just like watering your lawn. The more you water, the higher the grass gets. So, it's just getting back to that.
Yeah.
Let's get back to what we thought, and you've been doing this a long time as well. What is our normal seasonality? Let's get those rains. Let's get them in a duration, in a timing space that allows to be out there and keep the soils moist and whatnot, and shorten up our fire season. Not to put it out, but shorten it up again, and then get our monsoons back. Our monsoons have just rely on those, so we call them season-ending events.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have those anymore. We'll get one shot here or there, and it's just something that extends that fire season for us.
Yeah, it did used to be back in the day when the monsoon hit, pretty much around the entire state. That was it for the quote-unquote worst part of the fire season. Well, this past summer, I don't recall that we ever got the monsoon to help us out much on that matter.
Yeah, it was very spotty. You got some places that had good amount of rain and not. Like I said, wasn't that widespread monsoon like the Arizona's used to.
John Truitt is with the Arizona State Forestry. He's the State Fire Management Officer. And John, I appreciate your time today. I love learning about this topic because it's become such an important topic for Arizonans to know about. I appreciate your time, and good luck going forward as you and others are on the front lines fighting these fires. And I can wish you all the best of luck, and thank you.
Thank you, and also thank you guys for all your support. If it wasn't for our meteorologists and whatnot, we can't do our job. We need that accurate outlook, and that's how we predict where that fire is going to go. It depends a lot on the fire environment and our meteorologists. And we're on the larger fires. We have our IMETs assigned to us. They're in our back pockets every day, giving us weather briefings and all that. So you're a big part of our success out there.
John, I appreciate that, and you have a great day. See you.
All right, thank you.